So what I would say is, and I just typed a question into the box, is really how open-minded have you been over the last 6 months? And I think the biggest learning that all of our business owners have taken away is that it was important to embrace the fact that things were changing and changing rapidly, and not wanting to just shackle yourself to what you had already done or what you already were doing because you had money invested in a certain product line, or you had a specific structure around servicing a sector. So we had to embrace the wrongness straight away and start thinking, okay, well, if today is normal, if this is what the rest of our trading looks like going forward, how would we build the business again today? What would we do from scratch? What is important, I think, from every angle is we focused on what is certain in your control. Now, the virus and COVID and government decisions, none of this is within our focus of control. We cannot control these things. What we can control, though, are our decisions and the choices we make within the uncertainty. So the skill set you have is always still relevant. If you made brilliant products before, you were capable of making brilliant products still. It's just now, how do I get them in front of my customer? So maybe I have to think about a different way of distributing it. So if I look at our own example, we can't distribute coaching face-to-face during a lockdown, but we can distribute it via workshops and seminars and Zoom coaching. So we always had to challenge ourselves and business owners to start thinking differently. When we were open-minded, we started to see opportunities. So I'll give you some real-time examples. Working with a hairdressing salon, so local hairdressing salon, beauty therapy, obviously hugely impacted. One of the first businesses told to shut and one of the last ones allowed to open. So very quickly, it looked like it was doomsday scenario, and had very tearful conversations with my client. So we just had to come back to, well, what can we do? What can we still do in this situation? And she came up with us some brilliant ideas. So examples being, she set her appointment schedule to be like this through Zoom, and she was coaching people to have haircuts delivered by their husband. God forbid, but some of these things worked out all right. And she was charging a small amount of money. Wasn't a huge amount. Of course, the takings were lower. And of course, during this time, we're coaching them to make sensible financial decisions, take the right government support. But it was always about keeping open-minded. She came up with a brilliant idea, which was to take my clients' favorite hair colorings, for all the people on this call that, have a certain hair coloring they really love, thinking of months and months without having your roots done, nightmare. So she was pre-mixing the solutions, delivering to the client, leaving it COVID safe on the doorstep, and then coaching them how to apply it correctly, again, for a small charge. Our kind of mantra was, we must keep the scoreboard ticking over. It may not be scoring as high as we would have liked to, but we're going to keep it ticking over. And there's two reasons why that's important. It puts money in the pot, but secondly, it keeps us really positive in terms of mindset, showing that we can still win, we can still achieve, and we can change direction when needed. And I think that's the biggest learning, is the mindset shift we had to work with clients through to get a successful as possible outcome, even when businesses were really impacted. And we have lots of stories of really having to go into different sectors. I have people that I work with that made electronic equipment for live broadcasting and live events, again, hugely impacted. So we had to look for a new sector, and we developed some very fast products that we could then deliver to sectors where people were shifting to home broadcasting and Zoom equipment and working within home studios. It was really about, what can we deliver if we put everything today on the table as this is what normal looks like going forward? What am I still brilliant at, and how can I get my product or service in front of the best customer?
Great. Some great advice there, Sarah. I'd like to come to Joe, because Joe, you're an example of somebody that's had to reinvent and reach out to generate that level of creativity. So could you tell us a little bit more about your journey?
Yeah, so I'm quite new to running my own business. So last year is probably the first year that I really felt I was hitting my stride, I guess. So this year, you know, came as a really big impact. But what I do, quite a lot of the work I do with small businesses, helping them kind of hit pause and just reassess where is it I'm trying to go, what does success look like, what impacts am I trying to make. And I just had this moment when I was talking to someone else of, why haven't I done that for myself? You know, I'm kind of just getting up every morning and I'm just sitting here and I just keep going, but actually I'm not listening to my own advice. So I think for me it was about hitting pause. It was about thinking, right, okay, I've got this whole, you know, potentially big client base here, which has hit pause because my clients were in the care sector. So it wasn't that I could just move something onto Zoom. They weren't in the right place to be kind of having the work that we'd lined up. And, you know, this niggly thing that I kept thinking about around this space I was looking for, couldn't find. I thought, actually, I've got the space now to give it a go. You know, what have I got to lose? Basically, I've got this bit of time left now to really think about what I want that to look like and what impact that could bring. So I think sort of, if you can, you know, giving yourself that time to just kind of almost step above the business and look down onto it, to kind of really think, actually, you know, what am I trying to achieve? What impact am I trying to make? And what do I need to do to do it? And fundamentally for me, who do I need with me on that journey? So where do I need to go to get either that help? So some of the people on the panel today, but for me, what I was looking for was a real community of buddies, I guess, a community of just support where I could just be very vulnerable and kind of say, here's an idea I've had, is it rubbish, you know, etc. So for me, I was looking at that, and I think one of the lessons I've had is you're not going to be for everyone, and that's okay. So actually, you know, speak the speak that you need to speak to get the people who you need around you, but don't worry about the people that aren't going to get it, because they've probably got somewhere else that they get what they need.
Okay, that's great. We've got a very good example. June, you sent a good message out on the chat. Did you want to share your story with the panel? We can have a discussion. Might be able to help you with that. You might need to, I think you're on mute, June.
Okay, hello?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Right, hello. Yeah, so I've got a business. It's been running 14 years. It's got a very good turnover. I teach every day of the week. I go to various community centres and teach groups of ladies sewing. They all work on individual projects. For the first 6 months, I just had to close down, but I tried to keep in contact using the WhatsApp, and so people could ask me problems and I could try and help. I'm trying to set up Zoom, but whilst this sort of Zoom works, because we're all sitting here, trying to show somebody how to put a zip in on a Zoom is really difficult. Yeah. So I feel, and then they brought in the limit of 6. So I started up for 2 weeks, just got going, and then they brought the limit of 6. Well, by the time I pay my overheads, it's just not financially viable, because you have 5 students, I make 6, you pay your rent, I've got to have a wage. And then say somebody, again, because of COVID, I normally have a situation where they pay in advance. If they give me 24 hours notice, then I can fill their space if they're not going to come. But now, because of COVID, I can't be that strict. So if people ring in and say, well, I've got to isolate for 2 weeks, I could end up with a class of 3 with the full rent and absolutely make a loss. So again, my business is thriving every day. I could really expand, you know, I've got more people than I could possibly teach if we were normal, but I feel so frustrated. Yeah,
I can feel that, June, frustration, but you're in the right place, because everyone on this call, I'm sure, will have an idea of how you might like to deliver a different type of service, but on a different platform. I've got a few ideas. I'm sure other people have too. Anybody got any suggestions? You know, unmic yourself, mute yourself. Any suggestions for June?
I have, if that's okay.
Sarah, yeah.
If I follow on from I had very similar conversations with the hairdresser that I mentioned. So, I mean, when I'm cutting somebody's hair and coloring hair, how on earth can I do that virtually? Same kind of challenges. So what we actually looked at, as well as, apart from the fact that you've got brilliant relationships already with your customer, is go and reach out to those customers and say, look, they want you to thrive and do really well. They want you to be there at the end of this mess. So ask them, what way could I deliver the service to you that means something for you, that adds value for you while we're in this way? I would also really advise you to think about skilling up on creating your own videos, which you can do from home, where when it is the intricacies of how to fit a zip and how to repair something that needs close quarter, you can get in and show them step by step. So during your Zoom sessions, when it comes to the point where you're going to do zip installation, zip fitting, you play that video that's at close hand, step by step, and then you coach them through it. And actually what you could think about is anybody then that still has some challenges, you can meet with them socially distanced one-to-one and go through that. And maybe that comes at another incremental price. So actually you could do some very specific premium work with people and charge a little bit extra for that. So I think it's repurpose your business as if this is how it's going to be indefinitely, because you know what, June, you're then able to take your business to an international platform. You can be June that teaches people to sew in America, in Australia, wherever you want. You won't be restricted by geography or room size anymore. So I think put everything on the table. If this is normal, how can I get my brilliant product, my brilliant service to as many people that I can give benefit and value to?
Great, that's brilliant.
Good.
Can I just
Yes,
second what Sarah said? I think ask the community because that you've got them, and part of what I've been overwhelmed by is actually just by people are really keen to help, and they want to support you to be better. So I think I would just wanted to underline that point.
Oh, the people have been wonderful, and that's why I've tried to help them. But because, again, technology, I'm an older lady and I've learned how to use Zoom, but only just. I have got a camera and I've been trying to film things, but when you're on your own, which I am, it's very hard to film because what I do is I try and set my tripod up and I do bits and then I have to move the camera and then I do a little bit more. So I suppose I've got to really try and find somebody to come and help me to make the videos more successful, because it's very difficult stopping and starting, and then you've either got to try and link the video together, which again, my experience is all sewing. I've sewn all my life. I've worked in Zandra Rhodes, Marks and Spencer's, in all lots of high fashion places in London. So I've always been hands-on and with people, teaching in universities and then my sewing classes. It's like you're all saying, which is great. I've got to try and get a new mindset. I think the first 6 months I've been I've gotten downhill and just feeling so alone and not knowing what to do. But, I found this last night I was going through things and I found this, and already I feel re-inspired, which is really, really good. So I shall take on board what you said, because they're really great ideas, having a video alongside a Zoom. Which
can I just come back for one moment, Jean?
Yeah.
So this is something I've been coaching all the way through. There are, in your circle of influence, in your community, in your network already, people that can help you do what you want to do, have the things you want to have. So my challenge to you and to anybody on this call today is, who are the 5 people that you need to phone today to ask for help?
Right.
So you mentioned that you're connected into Portsmouth University.
Southampton
University. So in your connections with Southampton University, who there is somebody that might have the skills that you don't have that can help you? In your circle of influence right now, there are 5 people that have what you need in terms of skills, knowledge that can help you. Make those 5 phone calls today.
Can I write that down? I'm not, I'm just going to write that down.
That's great. I think building on Sarah and Joe's point, I think for the first time, especially with your opportunity, June, the first time that we look to the next generation for help on how we run our business. So utilizing technology, you've got any nieces and nephews perhaps you could tap into to show you how to use the ins and outs of social media. There's so much help out there.
It's ridiculous because it should have come to me, because when I was teaching, I used to organise students to go and do projects with businesses, and yet I didn't think about it for myself. It was one of my jobs within my teaching at the university. So,
well, I'm sure, June, Danny, in terms of your links to sources of funding or additional support, what sort of advice could you give June on that front? Danny.
Oh, sorry. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, I was just asking the question from where you sit.
Well, Portsmouth City Council can only help residents whose businesses are in postcodes PO1 to PO6. So June, you might be are you Southampton area or Portsmouth?
SO3.
Oh, right, yes. So it is worth contacting the business support team at Southampton Council. They work slightly differently to us. But yeah, and there's also Crowdfund Portsmouth, so that might be something that you're entitled to. Or there might be funding out there that you are. Kim Pellet's our contact here at Portsmouth, but there will be a contact at Southampton. So it's definitely worth contacting your council and speaking to the business support team.
Right, thank you.
That's not my area of expertise, but I know that there is that department there to support you.
Thanks, Danny. I know, Ross, did you want to come in and say a few things on, we produced a fact sheet with links to funding and additional support, June, that we can send to you.
That would be great.
Ross?
Absolutely, Rob. We will dig one out. Usefully, actually, and I will say this, Danny, usefully, Portsmouth have a really good paper on all of the access, all of the links to funding, grants, and everything else. Most of which I think are actually fairly generic, and if you can't access them directly through Portsmouth, then go to your local authority and find out what they're doing in a similar way. But a lot of them are through normal schemes and through bank loans and other areas. But the key to it is, I think, as Sarah has hinted at, first of all, really know what it is that you're pivoting towards, what change you're making, and then the funding and the grants and everything else will follow that. So, it's purpose first, and then a case of, funding and resources second. So I think, but I will hunt down and put that link onto the chat, and I hope it helps.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ross. From personal experience, June, at the Kickstarter program, for example, you don't have to be a very large organization to take advantage of the Kickstarter program. And I don't know if you're familiar with it, but as having done a little bit more digging on the Kickstarter scheme and working with Ross's organization, we hope to take on at least 10 Kickstarters, 10 young, bright characters that can help us grow our business. And that's a really good scheme for you perhaps to do something similar. But there are lots of different schemes like that can help you in a very practical way with your business.
Right, thank you.
Sorry, can I second something Sarah mentioned about, ring the 5 people, ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask help. In physical networking, you get introduced to people by your already contacts. You meet their contacts. A lot of people on LinkedIn seem to be afraid to ask their contacts to be introduced to others. I think at this time, particularly now, don't be afraid to ask. We're very polite and we wait to be introduced, but sometimes you might have to be more proactive and just ask for help or ask to be introduced to other potential people who could help you, or customers or groups or people like that.
Fantastic, thank you.
Those are, with your experience of running these networking groups, Alan, what would be the sort of the top 3 tips that you would, or myths that you would dispel about networking?
One of the myths is, you pop along and you will sell loads of things, because that's not a myth. Networking is not about just popping in and selling straight away. It's building up the connections, building up their relationships with people. It may take a while, but you will get known. I think most people heard of like Ian Gribble from LinkedIn Local. He's done a lot of networking. Everyone knows of Ian now. So yeah, one of the myths is you just pop along and people want to buy your stuff straight away. No, they want to get to know you. They want to know you, the person, and work that way. Relationships people do business with people. Yeah, so it's you they want to know rather than just turn up and sell it all. And that's one of the main ones. New people to networking seem to take a while to get the head round, but when it does, and things like that. So LinkedIn, you ask people for introductions. In networking, you would ask your contact, your friend, your partner to introduce you to other customers. So you can do that on LinkedIn as well.
Great, thank you, Alan. What in your experience, this is one's to Joe, what stops people from really embracing networking and taking that first step?
So I think it is the perception that it's a sales type environment. I think from personal experience, I think not every networking works. So you might go to one and kind of just the vibe's not quite right. Maybe it's not the right people in the room, whatever it is. Might put you off. But I think, you know, Alan's point is probably the key one, which is it is about relationships, and it's about just being you know, a human being in the room, kind of trying to connect with some other people. And it might not be the people in the room that are going to be the people that you ever get any work from, but actually it's about kind of who they know. And if you build that kind of trust and rapport with those people, then you know, that's what it's all about. For me, I think there is also something about, and I don't think I'm alone in this, I don't think this is everyone, but a few people I've spoken to have said the same thing, is this sort of sense of belonging. So I think it can be quite difficult for those of us that are introverts to walk into a room where virtually or physically, where there's a kind of a hubbub and a sense that people already know and bond, and they're all already quite pally. That can be quite difficult to enter into. And so, you know, what I try and do is kind of, mine isn't networking, but what I try and do is kind of build some relationships outside of the room with those people, so they feel welcome to kind of walk in and join in.
Great. Well, that's Sarah, I'm interested on some more details about some of the practical tools around this changing mindsets, because from our work with the Clipper Around the World Yacht Race, mindset played a massive part in defining the level of success that the skippers achieved, just by the way that the shadow that they cast on their crew, for example. And for many of them, we had to work with them to think about their mindset, refine it, change it. They're the only ones that could change it to get different results. So for somebody that's sitting on this session that's perhaps thinking about wanting to network, but you know what, in 2 weeks' time probably will not have made any steps forward to be a more productive networker, what would you say are some of the tips to keep those sort of characters a little bit more honest?
Right, so it's a very big question, and I think I would always steer people towards understanding what stops you. So I think the important thing is, in a coaching program that we run with people, when we talk about mindset, we have a very simple formula that is something that we say, be, as in the word be, BE times do equals have. Now, essentially, the first step for most people is to focus on the goal. So if I use this in the context of networking, and actually I would say right now, where we are with virtual networking, it's a brilliant leveler, because look, here we are all together. There's no cliques. There's no opportunity for cliques. We only see this much of each other, and we can tidy our backgrounds up and present ourselves however we like. So it's a brilliant leveler. So you come in as a complete and utter equal peer, whereas before you might have felt more intimidated. So that's the first point. But I think, like networking, like anything is in life, is we've got to set ourselves a goal. So what would networking look like as a really successful event for you? Would it mean 3 introductions to people that you could work with? Could it mean 3 referrals that someone gave to you? But setting yourself a goal on what it is you actually want to achieve. It might well just be something very simple to start with, which is, I'm normally quite a reserved person. So a great goal for me would be have one good conversation where I meet one new person. It can be simple, but set the goal. What do I want to have? Then before we get into the do, which is just turn up to the network event, now start thinking about the be part. Who do I need to be? And this is the upskilling part that we were talking about with June earlier. In order for me to have the things I want to have, I will need to do things, but most importantly, I need to be somebody that might be slightly different to the person I am today. So what stops me today? Who do I need to become? What do I need to learn? What gets in the way and what will I change? Because if I can be a different type of version of me, and then go and do the thing that I know will get me the result of what I want to have, I've got much more opportunity to be successful. So I'd say if there's anything that gets in your way right now, stopping you having the things you want, just give yourself a little score. Be times do equals have. So how would I score myself on the person I think I should be out of 10 versus how clear am I on the things that I need to do out of 10? And how clear am I on the things that I want to have, goal, outcome out of 10? Because the smaller that equation adds up to, the less chance we've got of being successful. But if I can get 10 out of 10 in B and 10 out of 10 in activity in the do, will I get the have?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sarah. Is that helping, June?
Yes, it has. It's really clarified things for me. It's made me want to get started now.
That's great.
Because I am a real doer. I'm normally, and I've just let this. I think it with most people, it just was such a shock when suddenly the country's closed down, and I think being on my own, it sort of, and I'm older, so I had to sort of self isolate quite a lot. It's been quite. It's got into my head and it stopped me being me. And this has really helped already this morning. I feel so excited again. I'm almost tearful.
Oh,
Great to hear, June. It's great to have you, and thank you for being so open and honest with us, because I think, Joe, you'd probably say that that's probably one of the key mindset shifts, that, you know what, you've taken that first step, you've shared the vulnerability to share in a group like this, and that's perfect, I think.
Yeah. And the power of that as well is that you give other people permission to be vulnerable back, because actually we're all feeling it in our own ways, and it sometimes takes someone, whether you call it brave or just kind of putting themselves out there, to be a bit vulnerable, and then actually, you know, it's a real role model for other people. So, you know, I think your story's been really powerful. Can I just say something on the back of what Sarah said? I think my before I hit pause, I was being really scattergun about what I was doing, and I was doing like 8 Zooms a day, and I was like, oh, this might be an interesting, or this might be good, or whatever. And since then, my word has been intentional, and that's kind of my mantra. In fact, I'm driving people a bit mad with it. But on the back of what Sarah said around, actually, what's your intent with this action? What's your intent with this meeting? And that is helping me kind of stay true and being a bit less busy and driving myself mad as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Joe, because it's very easy to confuse activity with progress without some sort of prior idea of what you want. Sarah's point about setting a very clear goal and taking actions and steps towards that. One of our other panelists from previous sessions, she runs her own marketing organization specializing in social media. And she's a lot younger than me, but she still struggles with getting the right type of routine with social media. She calls it a coffee cup routine. So she switches on a PC every morning, she pours herself a cup of coffee, and she spends half an hour doing 5 or 6 things every morning, so until they're ingrained into habit to network and put her business out there. I think it's a really good tip, because it's got to be easy, hasn't it? It's got to be consistent. It's like running a marathon, setting yourself running 50 miles a week from week 1, whereas you might want to start with 2 or 3 miles every other day. Is a much easier goal to achieve. So I think sometimes we can set unrealistic goals. So make it part of the routine, make it consistent. Danny, you've got a lot of experience of running business to business networking meetings. What have you found, because you work with SMEs also up to national sized organizations? What advice would you give for people accessing these networking groups?
Well, first of all, just to be yourself, stay engaged, be an open-minded. And yeah, you've got to put the work in. I mean, the meetings are actually, you know, the start of the icebreaker, if you like, but you have to actually put the work in. Yeah, and as following up from what Joe was saying, you have to find a meeting that works for you. Some people, like myself, single mums, you've got to get your children to school, so the early morning meetings are just not possible. So, you know, there are lunchtime meetings or evening meetings, but yeah, it's finding, you need to try them. And also you need to do more than one, but not too many. So probably no more than 2 or 3. But yeah, to try different meetings that work for you, really.
Okay, Danny, that's some good advice. Alan, with your, running 121 separate businesses across your site, how have attitudes changed? We're sort of in October now, we're locked down in March. Has there been a noticeable shift in attitudes as we go into another period of uncertainty up to Christmas?
Yeah, I think the initial shutdown in March was a total shock to everybody. I think this time people are a bit more prepared, if as it is going to be ongoing for longer than we expected. I mean, the unknown is how long, but I think people have got used it's a massive learning curve the past 6 months, and a lot of people are now into this new way of working. They're realizing that they can rota, they can do a lot from home, they can trust their team, they can trust the technology to work and not conk out halfway through an important meeting. So there's a lot of attitudes to that. Of using the technology that is there, and people are not afraid to use it now. I think at the start people were not sure, would it work, would it not work, how would it work, how would it be received if I'm trying to do my business online rather than face to face. So attitudes to that have changed, attitudes to how we work, where we work from, the times we work as well. As Danny says, if the task should be done, you could do the task at 10 o'clock at night. It doesn't have to be done between 9 and 5. It will fit in. As Danny said, not every time slot suits your lifestyle at the moment. I mean, working from home isn't the silver bullet for everybody. We get that. There still needs physical space. If you've got a lovely spare room and a desk set up, that's brilliant. But if you're perched on the end of your bed in a bed sit or one bed flat and you are lonely, you are isolated, it doesn't work for you. So people are using either co-work spaces where they can, or booking a meeting room just to see other people and have some social interaction. So I think people's attitudes of how they work, where they work, and when they work are totally changing. I say the first 6 months was a massive shock. I think people are realising this is the new way, and it's going to be the new way for some time to come.
It's interesting you mentioned that, Alan, because as a business, we've been coaching big UN organizations on resilience, and one of the challenges that they face is at the beginning of the lockdown, there were no borders or boundaries set within a normal working day. Emails were coming in on weekends and late in the evening, early in the morning, and there was an expectation everyone would respond in that moment. So I think it's important that as we're shifting into this new way of working, that we still take account of our own personal health and well-being. And Sarah mentioned mental toughness, and I'll come to you in a second, Sarah, to talk a little bit more about that. But setting boundaries within your normal working day was seen to be really important for this UN client, because they were their workload was just incredible in terms of the pickup in the volume. So setting boundaries was really important for them. Sarah, you mentioned that's mental toughness, and you've given us some great insights already. And one of the mitigating factors of retaining your resilience and mental toughness is your relationship network. We've talked about that, asking for help. and knowing that you're not alone in this place that we find ourselves. Are there any other elements that can help us develop our mental toughness and become more resilient?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we've learned over the last 6 months is that we are far more resilient and adaptable than we ever gave ourselves credit for. It shouldn't be a surprise. The human race is the dominant species on the planet. So it should be no surprise to us that we've got much more in our arsenal and our armory than maybe we realized. Just to talk about mental toughness and mental health overall, I think it's important that communication is really paramount in everything we're doing. And in terms of what everyone's been through in the last 6 months, whether you're a solopreneur or whether you have team, the ability and the willingness to not just communicate, but over communicate. So checking in on people, how are they doing? So one of the things that we coach very early on is, especially for people managing remotely with teams, is just do that sense check. You know, before you even get into a conversation about work and business, you know, well, tell me a little bit about how you are. How are you doing right now today? Because let's be completely clear, when adversity strikes, you know, the brain is wired in a very specific way. You know, and our ancient reptilian brain was there to keep us alive, and it only does 3 things. And you've all heard of it before. It does 3 things. It either freezes and does nothing. And we saw too much of that at the beginning of COVID, where people were just paralyzed and didn't know what to do. Then we had other people that put the shutters down and said, I'm doing nothing. I'm just running away. It's too scary. They flew away, they flight. And then the other part of it is what we can fight. And I think you have to just be aware that at certain times you will be in one of those modes. Your brain only does 1 of 3 things in adversity. It flees, it does nothing and freezes, or it fights. So I think it's important to recognize when you're feeling in that state where you are frightened, you feel vulnerable, and reaching out and acknowledging it. It's okay. Your brain is wired that way. It doesn't make you weak. It doesn't mean that you're, you know, a bad person. It just simply means that your amygdala, the part of the brain that's controlling your emotions, has hijacked you and is going into an autopilot routine. Now, if you've ever struggled with the inability to make decisions under pressure, or you felt that you weren't resilient enough or you weren't tough enough, there is some brilliant self-help reading around this. So I would recommend, I don't know where to start. One of the best books around this would be something called The Chimp Paradox. If anyone's read that, by Dr. Stephen Peters, amazing book. Marshall Goldsmith, Mojo. Atomic Habits by James Clear. There is some brilliant reading that helps you understand yourself better, so that you can start to just simply rationalize when you're feeling under threat, under attack. You can't make decisions. You feel too vulnerable. Recognize it, understand what's happening, and definitely communicate how you feel. And I would say those that have team, please do ask your team how they're doing, because all of us are going through these different cycles of emotions in the last 6 to 9 months. And as we head towards Christmas, more uncertainty coming, etc. So do take the time to check in and acknowledge what's happening with yourself.
Great. Joe, I'm sure you've got points to add on that, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, just top of mind is, I think even if we haven't got teams, we've got kind of matrix teams around us. So I've been talking quite a lot about sort of almost thinking of our pseudo teams, if you like. So, you know, the people that help us with our website, the people that produce whatever it is we sell, people on this call. Actually, I think it is really important that we do check in with each other. We've got a real responsibility around that. And I think, you know, just to echo Sarah's point around, people have been talking a lot about, yeah, the resilience that they found, resilience and creativity that they never thought they had, and, you know, doing stuff they never thought they would be doing. And again, you know, possibly that was all a bit scattergun in the early days, and now, you know, actually kind of coming back to this kind of intentional act around what it is you're actually trying to achieve. And I think mindset is really key. You know, once the mindset's right, actually it's then about, you know, really seeing, you know, I had people literally come into the meetings who have said, I'm on the verge of getting a job. I'm on the verge of just wrapping it all up. I just can't do it anymore. and you know, the community have kind of picked them up and helped them get going. And then with the mindset, actually it's then all about opportunity. It's all about kind of real excitement and kind of doing stuff that, you know, really outside our comfort zones. But actually I think we've all really grown, you know, whether through the business or just personally. I think we've all grown through this period.
So Joe, do people know how to join your organisation on the chat?
No, they don't. I'll drop something on there.
Sarah, you mentioned some good points. The word vulnerability. There's some great material by a lady called Brené Brown out in Texas. Some great TED Talks. She talks about there's no vulnerability without first acting with courage. The two words go side by side. So I think it applies nicely to all of the stories that we've heard this morning around taking that first step. You've got to be prepared to be a little bit more vulnerable. So June, you've demonstrated that brilliantly this morning. So Jane, I know that you put something on the chat. I don't know whether you would like to share your story with everyone.
I can do. Nice to see. I'm starting to see some familiar faces on these Zooms, which is quite nice. So obviously I've been doing some networking over the last few months, which wasn't really my bag, I have to say. And some of you on this will probably know my story very well. I had a global face-to-face training company that I had been running on my own since 2013. And I didn't really realise how wonderful this business was until it stopped, because it took me all over the world to some very glamorous places, and I had superb clients who looked after me very, very well. And then on March the 1st, because it was overseas, because it was in hospitality, and because it was face-to-face, my business collapsed completely. Needless to say, I haven't really earned a penny now since March the 1st. So you can imagine that it was pretty devastating when that happened. However, due to some really good talkings to by somebody who is on this Zoom, I won't mention him, but he has sort of kicked me up the bottom a few times. I got my mojo back and I started to think about what I could do in terms of online training. And people said to me, God, Jane, just put your stuff online. Not that easy. Number one, my whole audience disappeared because everybody was either on furlough or sadly they've all been made redundant. So it wasn't that easy. But what I have found is that I've got a very transferable skill, surprisingly. And what I can do in terms of training can actually go out to other industries. So over the last few months, it's been a complete project. It's been a complete pivot. It's been a complete change in direction. And I'm about to launch a whole new product that's going to come out in the next 3 to 4 weeks, which I am really, really excited about, really, really frightened. And I've got no idea if it's going to work, but I've got a lot of enthusiasm about it. And hopefully in the next few weeks, I can actually start telling people about it. But basically, it's to take my work online in the professional way that I used to do it as a face-to-face trainer. And that's really what my goal is, to kind of take my skill from what I was doing to what I can do now in the future. Like I said, who knows? Got no idea if it's going to work, but fingers crossed and the wind in the right direction, it will happen for me.
Brilliant, Jane. That's a great story. What, if you don't mind me asking, what type of training do you deliver?
I did everything from leadership training. So I used to put together management excellence programs. So I used to go out there. I used to find clients. I used to understand what they really, really needed. I used to design all of the workshops and then I used to deliver them. So it went from leadership training then to negotiation skills, essential selling skills, account management, and then customer training skills. So it was a real broad spectrum. Yes. And that's what's helped me really, I think, over the last few months, is that I have got a broad spectrum of skills that I can use. Probably didn't really give myself enough credit for that over the last few months, I have to say. I became a real ostrich and put my head in the sand a lot over the last few months. Yeah. yeah, so it's really had to pull out what my skill set is over the last few months and kind of think, yeah, okay, what can I do with this? And yeah, hopefully something will come of this. And I've had a huge amount of support from my clients out there, which has also been wonderful to see over the last few months. And they've sort of kept me riding the wave, as it were. And hopefully by this time next year, I might be back on my day job, but who knows? I might never get back on a plane ever again. But I was away 200 days of the year approximately. So being stuck at home has been a challenge.
Yeah.
I've been crawling walls a lot over the last few months. Yeah.
Was there a moment you can remember to sort of take us back to the time where it sort of the switch flicked?
I had a big discussion on a one-to-one basis, and I had about 2 or 3 months ago, I guess. And I really had to sit down and dig deep and think to myself. And I think as well, everybody thought, you know, September the 1st, we're all going to start coming back and, you know, people are going to start going back to work. Hey, it didn't happen. And I think at that point in time, I was like, right, shit, sorry, I'm going to have to do something about this, because if, you know, I've got a mortgage to pay kind of thing. I'm on my own. I live on my own. I do, you know, that's my world. So, yeah, so I think there was a number of elements that came into it that finally kind of switched the light bulb on. And equally, I joined a webinar with the wonderful Simon Sinek last week. And he talked about pivoting, he talked about resilience, he talked about progression, and he really made me think, actually, I'm doing the right thing. And I thought, well, if Simon Sinek is telling me I'm doing the right thing, then I must be doing the right thing. Yeah. So it's taken a lot of brain work, I think you could say, over the last few months to get back to where I want to be. But hopefully by the end of this year, I'll have a success story.
Oh, great, Jane. Well, thanks for sharing, and obviously keep coming on these sessions and sharing those lessons with others.
Yeah. So, well, hopefully in the next few weeks, I might actually have a product to tell you about. That would be even marvelous. But yeah, it's going to take a bit of time as I write my list of things to do. It just gets ever bigger. But anyway, that keeps me busy and motivated.
Well, you know, encourage you to come on other sessions, because we'll have different panelists that will add you know, additional value to that journey. And you know, connecting up with Jo and her network, I'm sure there'll be people in there that can help along the way.
Because I think one of my biggest challenges was, and this is no joke, I had no idea, or I had no contacts with anybody in the UK, because all of my business was overseas. So I literally had to start right back at the starting line, because I knew no one. I live in Highclere. I go to Newbury. I've only just discovered that we've got a cinema in Newbury. I went to Waitrose. I came home, and that was my network of people. I didn't even know who belonged in the UK. So it's taken a lot of work to network, to find people, to talk to people, and to create this kind of like web of people now that I've got that I can go to. And that's been really helpful over the last few months.
Great, Jane. Oh, that's a great story. Rachel, I know that, did you have something to share, Rachel? You're on mute, Rachel. A new word in our lexicon. You're still on mute, Rachel. Let me see if I can unmute you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello. Well, I run a non-for-profit organisation, and I'm a theatre practitioner. And literally, I've worked in museums and theatres and schools. Teaching is my background, but literally overnight, my work sort of went. My specialism is working with the elderly. I really just love working with expats and the elderly in our community. I work with a lot of community groups, the Alzheimer's, and that's where I really love to be. So with what's happened, I feel like I'm being pulled out of that demographic, and I've just worked with Pamodzi doing a wellbeing for children in primary schools, and I've just written a scheme of work for them to go in. It's going to go national, so it's done really, really well. But what I really want to do is I do performances, and I do Zoom performances, and I do them online, and I've got a lot of work that way. But I feel like I'm working for everybody else rather than running my own business and being proactive. Everyone, you know, I want to do it that way. I want to lead and everybody else to come on board rather than working that way, being pulled, you know, that's how I feel. I'm looking to start now, because I've worked with the elderly for 10 years. I'd like to start running a training scheme, because I can't obviously go into care homes. I'd really like to be able to give coordinators and carers and people who are living with dementia some training online, and creative training online. So for the past sort of 3 or 4 months, I've been packaging a product. I don't know if it's going to do well, but it just involves me not being there, and I can deliver a performance, and then I've got a resource box with all the resources, and that goes into care homes.
Yes.
And it's got the scripts on, and it's got the backing tracks, and it's got the activity sheets inside, and it's got all the costumes, and it's got reminiscence, and it's got all the things that I used to do in a box.
Yes.
And so that I can go and take it in places and leave the box with all the costumes, so that the coordinators can sing along and can do plays, and they can hire the boxes from me for a couple of days, 2 or 3 days. Then I can come back, clean them all up, get them COVID friendly. And I want to do a course around that as well, so I can really teach the coordinators, just from a creative point of view, the things that really work. So that's really my specialism. I worked at Portsmouth University as a research engine, and for the Alzheimer's, and I ran my own business and was funded by the Arts Ward. So those really are my specialisms, working with dementia. So that's where I really want to go. But I just don't know how to get to that next level. I've got all this product now that I've done.
Yes.
And now I don't know, because I normally work with this group of people, I don't know how to take it to the next level. I've just literally got no.
Yeah. Well, Rachel, you come to the right place. So I know that Joe would be, or Sarah, or anyone on the team here today would be able to help. I know that Ross, the Health and Wellbeing Alliance that we've been working on for the last 2 or 3 months, may well be a brilliant channel for you, Rachel. Ross, is it worth sharing a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. Thank you, Rob. Yes, Rachel, absolutely. We've been building up, it's in the early stages, been building up a wellbeing alliance, bringing together businesses, charities, you know, CICs, etc., that are looking to provide support in this field, support whether that's around support to businesses, around support to people, support to employees, and it's right across the whole spectrum. So, you know, if you're as a manager undergoing issues and changes at what you're finding difficult to manage, if you've got staff that are obviously in the new circumstances finding it difficult to manage, if you're in the business of providing individual support to clients, or clients going through incredible changes in their lives, whether that's caused by the current situation or generally, and so we've brought together a group of specialists in those fields, and we're looking to expand on that. So we're looking for innovation, new ideas, creativity, things that we can offer out in those environments that is going to make people think afresh and address their needs in a positive way. So I think on 2 parts actually, Rachel. I think, you know, you should contact me and we should discuss how that can work. It did occur to me, I put this in the chat as well, and listening to you and to others, some business pivots are so fundamental that sometimes it might be helpful to stand back and say, do you know what, this is a business startup from my perspective, that in effect, I am now looking at a new market. I'm utilizing my skills and experiences, which of course all startups do. That's the change. But the model that you're looking to operate is so different. And then you should just say, okay, I know how to run a business because I've done it, but it's always good to have a bit of objectivity. So go through the startup processes and see how they can help. Because not only they'll give you access to funding and finance, but then they'll challenge your thinking. They'll help you to look at your things afresh, look at your business afresh. And even though you may be thinking it's more of a pivot, they might be seeing it as a startup. And that just, I think, might be quite useful. But get in touch, Rachel, as far as the
I will do. Thank you. Thank you.
Joe, go ahead, Joe. You're on mute.
All I was going to say, Rachel, is while you were talking, it just struck me, all your experience and, across your whole career, you're incredibly well connected in terms of what you're trying to do. So I would just think maybe about some of those people you've worked with before, where you've got that relationship. They might not be the right person, but they've got a network as well. So it might just be, you've obviously got a lot of experience. You probably know quite a lot of really important people that could help you. So maybe just have a think about, to Sarah's point earlier, who are those key people who themselves might be really well connected that might be able to help.
Yeah.
I think it's a great point, Joe. I think that just with the 3 conversations that we've had, Jane, for example, has traveled a journey with her moving her materials online. Got June, who offers services to remotely and trying to make that step. Perhaps there's something in you 3 getting together and the art of the possible. Why not do what Jane does and give people in care homes the opportunity to sew and develop their skills in that respect. There's even in this session, there's some exciting opportunities that have come to light. So please stay in touch with one another and put your contact details in the chat below. Yeah. So I'm conscious of time. We've got about 5 minutes left. Anything, final comments from, we'll start with you, Sarah. Any final comments on the session today? And we'll go to Danny, then Joe and Helen. Sarah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this is to the whole group, but essentially, and this is the practical part of what I'd like to share with everyone today. And I think it's particularly relevant to obviously the conversation with Rachel and with June, etc., is really having the ability to know what it is that you want to have. So if you think about this new business venture that you're creating, Rachel, and you say, I don't know how to get it to the next level, you've got to define it. What is it you actually want? So that will help you then start focusing on, well, who do I want to sell to and who do I want to access my product? But you've really got to define that end goal. So what does this venture look like? Who's it for? And what's my end goal? Because then you can start to plan how you get there.
For me, I feel like I would really love to work with outside organisations as well. So for instance, with care homes, I feel like with COVID, they could be in their little bubble, and actually they could be a bubble that go into a gym, and actually, then the gym staff need to be trained on how to work with people with dementia, and the larger organisations, how to make them less scary. So actually, I think we need to think about not just going into care homes, but because actually people are in their bubbles, how we use that in a really positive way that can go forward.
Yeah, so all I would say is, and this might sound quite boring considering we've had a really inspirational, motivational discussion, is let's get that laid down in some form of plan. So where is it you want to get to? Identifying your target audience and all the new areas of opportunity, and then we break it down into building blocks, because a 12-month plan is essentially just a series of 4 quarterly plans, which are just a series of monthly plans. Break those into weeks, break those into daily activities, and they move you forward to achieving your goal. But the number one most important thing is set the goal so that you can then start building your plan to achieve it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sarah. Joe?
Yeah, so I suppose my point would be, for many of us, we are our business. It's personal. So as well as the operational planning stuff, I think it's about thinking of ourselves as our business. You know, if we were our team, what would we be saying to ourselves about our energy levels, what we might need at the moment? And I think, you know, a lot of us are looking for that kind of connection and kindness. So where might you get that? And also just your own personal development. I think to think about your own development as business development, because, you know, we're intrinsically linked to the success of the business, really. So kind of think about looking after yourselves as well.
Brilliant, Joe. Thank you. Danny, final words from you.
Yeah, I'd just like to reiterate that networking can be really effective if you just get out there and collaborate.
Great. Just get on and do it. Great advice.
Yeah.
Alan.
Yeah, for me, I think from this, I'd say look after yourselves, guys, but don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be too polite, too reserved to ask for help. I've seen on the chat many great links have gone through for various funding and advice, and even the connections from this group today. But don't be afraid to ask. It's a lot of people are more than willing to help you, more than you realise. I think there's a lot of support within the local business community in Portsmouth and Hampshire anyway. So please don't be afraid to ask for assistance if you need it.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you. Thank you, panel, for your wise counsel this morning. I'm going to ask Ross for a final few words and to close the session.
Thanks, Rob. Well, I must say that I am inspired by what we've been hearing today. And what is really nice is the fact that all of this discussion has been built up from individual perspectives and real life examples of business experience. And that's actually what a Chamber of Solutions is about. That's what a community of practice is about. And so well done, everybody. I think we've achieved the objective for today. I think it's absolutely brilliant. And I know it's not easy actually sharing, because you can feel vulnerable in doing that sometimes. But we're all here to help. And I like the fact that, I didn't note this down, but I like the fact that Joe said, remember to be kind, because fundamentally that's why we come together. We come together to support each other, and we have come together to chart a way through what have been some pretty tough times and are going to be for the next 6 months. But I do know, and I'm probably old enough to kind of know, that actually in a year or 2 years' time, we'll be looking at this and say, this was the transformation, this was the transition that actually made our business what it now is. And so I think this is something that we should celebrate in a way. We know why we're going through this, and we know that we'll come out the other side and we'll be in a strong position. So thank you, everybody, for sharing so positively with each other. And we will keep you fully informed of all future Chamber of Solutions. They're all variable themes, some around well-being, some around people and teams, some around pivoting a business, some around startups, and some international trade. We have a whole range, but if you come to those, you will over time get a full picture of the kind of opportunities, and I think be motivated to drive your business forward. Finally, I would like to thank the star of the show, I think, which is always Rob, and the way that you managed to keep this together and keep it flowing so brilliantly well, Rob. So thank you for chairing that so superbly, and thank you everybody for your input. And finally, thank you the specialists for making it such an enjoyable event. Back to you, Rob.
Thank you, Ross. June and Rachel and Jane, it'd be great to see how you get on. I think there's some great opportunities for you three to collaborate. So much to share between you and everyone else on the call. So thank you all for coming. Have a great rest of the week, and see you on the next session. The panel, if we can stay behind just for a quick wrap up. But yeah, nice to see you all.